Ever notice how the loudest person in the room is usually the most anxious, or how the most reactive friend is also the most drained? We scroll, we compare, we react, and somewhere along the line we forgot how to just be. But what if calm wasn't a luxury? What if it was a skill that could change everything? We often mistake stillness for weakness, as if sitting in silence or taking a moment to breathe is a sign that we're out of moves. But in reality, stillness isn't the absence of action. It's the presence of awareness. It's a deliberate decision to pause, to process, to lead not from emotion but from clarity. And in a world obsessed with speed, that choice alone becomes an act of quiet rebellion. When everyone is rushing to speak first, the one who listens longest holds the real power. Stillness gives us space to hear more than just words. It lets us hear what's behind them, the intent, the fear, the insecurity. Without stillness, we jump to defend, we react, we assume, but in stillness we create a gap between stimulus and response, and in that space we reclaim control. We move from reacting to responding, from noise to nuance. We live in a culture that rewards urgency. We're told to hustle, to grind, to always be doing something. But relentless motion doesn't equal meaningful progress. The engine that never stops eventually burns out. Stillness, on the other hand, is how we refuel. It's where our best ideas are born, not in chaos, but in quiet. When the mind is still, it connects dots the busy brain overlooks. It makes sense of the mess. Leaders who don't practice stillness often lead from fear. They micromanage, overreact, and fill every silence with noise to cover up uncertainty. But those who lead from stillness, they radiate a different kind of authority. It's not loud, it's not aggressive, it's calm, composed, and grounded, and people trust it. Not because it demands attention, but because it earns it. Presence is more powerful than pressure. Think about nature. The ocean doesn't need to scream to show its strength. A mountain doesn't need to move to prove its presence. There is force in stillness that words can't capture. It's the kind of strength that doesn't need to be seen to be respected. The kind that doesn't chase validation because it already knows its worth. That's the kind of strength stillness cultivates in us, unshakable, not because it's loud, but because it's rooted. Most people fear stillness because it confronts them with themselves. The moment we slow down, we start to hear the thoughts we've been avoiding, the questions we don't want to answer, the truths we've been burying beneath distractions. But here's the paradox. The very discomfort we avoid by staying busy is the same discomfort we need to face in order to grow. Stillness is uncomfortable, not because it's empty, but because it's honest. Stillness is not about doing nothing. It's about doing one thing with full presence. It's about being where your feet are. Whether you're listening to someone with full attention or simply sitting with your own thoughts, you are practicing presence. And presence is the birthplace of all great leadership, all deep connection, all true peace. Without it, we're just bodies moving through the motions, disconnected from what matters. In stillness, we learn to hear the whisper of our intuition. That subtle voice that gets drowned out by the external noise, the opinions, the algorithms, the constant commentary on how we should be living. When we're still, we remember what we believe, what we value, and we begin to move not with the crowd, but with conviction, not because others are doing it, but because it aligns with something deeper inside us. Stillness sharpens our vision. When water is agitated, it becomes cloudy, but when it's still, everything becomes clear. The same is true for the mind. In stillness, we see problems from new angles. We stop panicking about what's urgent and start focusing on what's important. We rise above the noise, above the fear, above the petty, and from that altitude we lead, not just others, but ourselves. What makes stillness hard isn't the world, it's us. It's our fear of falling behind, our addiction to stimulation, our need to prove we're doing enough. But the truth is, the most powerful people in any room are rarely the loudest. They're the most centered, the ones who don't need to speak to command attention, because their presence says enough, and that presence, it's built in the quiet. Detachment sounds cold at first. It sounds like giving up or pulling away. But in reality, detachment is not the absence of care, it's the absence of chaos. It's not letting go of people or values, it's letting go of expectations that trap us in frustration. When we detach, we don't stop feeling, we stop clinging, we stop tying our worth to how others behave, how situations unfold, or how perfectly life aligns with our plans. So much of our emotional suffering doesn't come from what is. It comes from what we expected it to be. We walk into conversations expecting validation, and when we get criticism instead, we spiral. We enter relationships expecting consistency, and when people show us their instability, we resist what's right in front of us. Detachment is the ability to experience life without needing it to match the version we scripted in our heads. It's the mental discipline to say, "This is not what I hoped for, but it's what's real right now, so I will respond, not resist." Control is seductive. We try to micromanage outcomes, people, timing, even emotions. But control is almost always an illusion. The more tightly we grip things, the more exhausted we become. Because what we're really doing is reacting to our own fear. Fear of uncertainty, fear of loss, fear of being left behind. Detachment is not about becoming numb, it's about becoming wise. It's recognizing what belongs to us, and what never did. You cannot control how someone interprets your words. You cannot control if someone loves you back. You cannot control how fast healing comes or how long opportunity takes. But you can control your presence. You can control your response. You can control how much of your peace you're willing to give away to things you cannot change. And when you shift your focus from external control to internal regulation, that's when the real transformation begins. We often confuse detachment with indifference, as if by detaching, we're somehow betraying our humanity. But the opposite is true. Detachment honors our humanity. It says, "I care deeply, but I will not self-destruct for what's beyond me." It's the difference between holding someone's hand and carrying their weight. One is love, the other is martyrdom, and the line between them is drawn by healthy detachment. Attachment tells us, if I don't fix this, I'll lose everything. Detachment says, even if I lose something, I won't lose myself. One mindset builds prisons, the other builds boundaries. And boundaries are what give us room to breathe, to think clearly, to see people and situations as they are, not as we wish them to be. That clarity is what gives us our power back, because no one can manipulate a person who's grounded in their own clarity. Detach from the need to be understood by everyone. Some people are committed to misunderstanding you because it serves their story. You don't need to convince them. You need to free yourself. Detach from needing closure from people who never offered clarity while they were in your life. Some goodbyes won't come with explanations. Closure is something you choose, not something you wait to receive. That's the control detachment gives you. It hands the pen back to you and says, write your own ending. Sometimes we stay emotionally entangled because we think our loyalty will change the outcome. We overextend, overexplain, overstay. But the truth is, no amount of attachment can rewrite someone else's role in your story. Detachment reminds you that you are not responsible for anyone's growth but your own. That your peace is not a reward for fixing someone. It's a result of finally choosing yourself. When we detach, we make space. Space to feel without drowning, space to love without losing, space to act without reacting, and in that space we begin to see things clearly, what was really ours to carry, what wasn't, and where we need to walk next. Detachment creates that distance, not to disconnect us from life, but to reconnect us with what truly matters, perspective, presence, and peace. Attachment often feels like connection, but it's usually control in disguise. Detachment feels like distance at first, but it's actually freedom. The freedom to witness something fall apart without falling apart yourself. The freedom to accept people for who they are instead of trying to edit them. And the freedom to know that your peace does not live in the behavior of others. It lives in your own ability to step back, observe, and choose wisely. There's a moment, split second and fragile, that sits between what happens to us and how we respond. Most of us miss it. We jump, we lash out, we defend, we absorb. But in that tiny, invisible space lives the truth that we often forget. We are not our reactions. Our reactions are just habits, neural shortcuts we've practiced over time. They are not our values, they are not our essence, and they don't have to be permanent. Every time someone says something that upsets you and you snap, that's not your nature, it's your pattern. Every time you feel insulted and you rush to prove your worth, that's not your identity, it's your wound. And when you realize this, everything begins to shift. Because now, instead of being a puppet to your emotions, you begin to stand apart from them. You start to observe, and observation is the first step to transformation. The world will always poke at your soft spots. People will test your patience, question your motives, challenge your peace. That's not a flaw in the system. It's part of being human. But the way you respond is the only part you own. And the more conscious you become of your reactions, the more power you reclaim, because that awareness creates a gap, a pause, and that pause is your greatest ally. Think about the times you've said something you didn't mean, out of anger, defensiveness, insecurity. Those words didn't come from your core values. They came from your conditioning, maybe from past trauma, maybe from the way you learned to protect yourself when you felt small. But that's not who you are. That's who you've been trained to become in moments of stress. And the beautiful thing is, training can be unlearned. Reaction is instinctive, it's fast, automatic, but response, that takes maturity. It takes stillness. It takes the humility to admit, just because I feel this doesn't mean I am this. Emotional intelligence begins the moment we realize that feelings are data, not identity. They inform us, but they don't define us. Anger might visit, but it doesn't have to unpack. Jealousy might rise, but it doesn't get to drive the car. So many of our relationships break not because we're bad people, but because we don't know how to sit with our own discomfort. We react to what we fear in others. We project, we blame, we punish. But what if in those moments we remembered that we are not the storm passing through us, that behind the reaction is a quieter, calmer self waiting to take the wheel, a self that doesn't need to win every argument, prove every point, or defend every feeling. You've been conditioned to think that every reaction needs a platform, that every offense needs a counterattack. But strength isn't always loud. Often it's in the restraint, in the deep breath, in the choice to walk away, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom. It takes courage to pause, to say, "This doesn't deserve my energy," to not let someone else's chaos dictate your character. When we identify with our reactions, we trap ourselves in cycles. We say, "That's just how I am," but it's not how you are. It's how you've learned to survive, and the truth is, survival mode is not meant to be permanent. You deserve to live from intention, not impulse, to act from clarity, not emotional residue, and to see your reactions not as flaws, but as flags, signals pointing you toward deeper healing. You are allowed to feel deeply. But feeling something doesn't mean you have to act on it. You can feel disrespected and still respond with dignity. You can feel misunderstood and still respond with patience. That choice, that split-second decision, is what defines maturity. Not the absence of emotion, but the ability to channel it wisely. It's not about suppressing what you feel. It's about stewarding it responsibly. The goal isn't to become emotionless. The goal is to become emotionally anchored. So when the waves of reaction come, and they will, you don't drown in them, you observe them, you learn from them, and then you choose what serves me here, what reflects who I really am, not just what I'm momentarily feeling. We spend years, sometimes decades, chasing the approval of others. It starts early. Gold stars, claps, nods of approval, likes, compliments. We learn that to be seen is to be validated, that to be accepted, we must perform. And somewhere along the way, we start editing ourselves, not to reflect who we truly are, but to fit the version that pleases others. But the deeper truth is this: no amount of external validation will ever compensate for the absence of internal peace. The need for approval is loud. It wants to be noticed. It needs to be fed constantly, but inner peace is quiet. It doesn't scream for attention. It simply is. And the more we chase the external, the more we lose sight of the internal. We become mirrors for others instead of windows to our own soul. We shrink our opinions, mute our instincts, and stretch ourselves into shapes that aren't ours, just to belong somewhere that doesn't even feel right. When you live for approval, you become a prisoner to inconsistency, because people change, their moods shift, their preferences evolve. What they love about you today might irritate them tomorrow. And if your sense of self is built on that, you'll constantly be adjusting second, guessing, and ultimately exhausting yourself. Inner peace, on the other hand, anchors you. It says, I know who I am, even if they don't understand me today. There is a kind of quiet confidence that only comes when you stop seeking applause, not because you've stopped caring, but because you've started listening to yourself, to your values, to that still voice inside that says, this path might not be popular, but it's honest. And that honesty is worth more than 1,000 nods from people who are clapping for a version of you that isn't even real. Approval is performance-based, it's conditional. It asks, what have you done for me lately? But inner peace is presence-based. It says, I am enough right now. It's not earned through perfection. It's built through alignment, through knowing your choices reflect your values, that your yes is truly a yes, and your no isn't a guilt-ridden maybe. Peace comes when your inner life and your outer life finally match. The pressure to be liked is heavy. It convinces us to over-explain, to over-apologize, to over-deliver. We start to betray ourselves for the comfort of others. But approval is temporary, and every time we sacrifice our peace for it, we teach ourselves that we are only worthy when others say so. That's not affirmation. It's dependency, and dependency breeds resentment. Toward them, toward ourselves, toward the life we feel stuck in. You don't need to be understood by everyone. You weren't made for universal applause. You were made to be real, not perfect, to be rooted, not rehearsed. The more you make peace your priority, the less you'll tolerate anything that disrupts it, including your own habits of seeking validation. Approval may come and go, but peace, when it's real, it stays. And you begin to realize that some people's disapproval isn't a loss. It's liberation. It's easy to be pulled into the game of perception, to curate your life for the feed, to speak just enough truth to seem authentic, but not enough to make anyone uncomfortable. But that kind of life is hollow. It's carefully staged, but emotionally empty. Inner peace isn't about being seen in the best light. It's about being okay even in the dark, when no one's watching, when no one's clapping. When it's just you and your conscience. The people who truly love you don't need you to perform. They don't require versions. They're not tallying your worth. They value you because you are aligned, not because you are impressive. And ironically, the more peace you carry, the more people trust you, because peace is magnetic. It doesn't sell anything. It just is. And that authenticity becomes your most powerful presence. Approval might open doors, but it can't build a home. Not the kind of home your soul needs, that comes from choosing peace, again and again, from doing the thing that aligns with your values even if it disappoints someone, from setting the boundary even if it means losing favor, from being proud of who you are when no one else is clapping, because the real question isn't, do they approve of me? It's, can I live with myself when the noise fades? Success used to be measured in accumulation. More money, more recognition, more possessions, more followers. But something strange happened along the way. People reached those milestones and still felt empty. The houses got bigger, the calendars got fuller, and the hearts got heavier. That's when we began to see the cracks. That's when we began to ask, what if success isn't about more? What if it's about less, but better? Simplicity isn't the absence of ambition. It's the presence of clarity. It's knowing what truly matters and having the courage to subtract everything else. The loudest lives often hide the most confusion, but the quiet ones, the ones not broadcasted on every platform, those lives tend to have a kind of rootedness. They're built not to impress, but to endure. And endurance only comes when your life is aligned, not overloaded. We often confuse complexity with sophistication. We think if it looks intense, it must be meaningful, but complexity often masks insecurity. Simplicity, on the other hand, is confidence. It's the art of choosing fewer things more deeply. It's choosing the right direction, not every direction. It's saying no, not out of fear, but out of purpose. Because when you know what matters, saying no isn't a sacrifice. It's self-respect. Look at the people who seem most at peace. They're not rushing. They're not explaining. They're not in a race to prove themselves. They've designed their lives around what they love, not what others expect. Their homes may not be extravagant. Their routines may seem boring, but their minds are quiet. Their hearts aren't always racing. That kind of calm is the new success. It just doesn't post selfies. We've been taught to measure success by visibility, but the best lives aren't always visible. Some of the most successful people don't need to tell you who they are. Their presence is felt in how they treat others, how they speak with intention, how they show up without chaos. Their life is simple but not small, because simplicity isn't about shrinking, it's about focusing. And focus is a form of power. It takes courage to live simply in a world that sells noise. Everything around us is designed to distract, to complicate, to compete for our attention. Simplicity means stepping off that stage. It means not needing to play every role. It means not needing to have an opinion on everything, be at every event, or win every argument. Success isn't found in being everywhere, it's found in being fully here. The more complicated our lives become, the harder it is to hear ourselves. We mistake motion for progress. We confuse being busy with being important, but there's a difference between a full life and a fulfilled life. One is crowded, the other is clear. Simplicity clears the space to think, to breathe, to connect without agenda. It doesn't strip life of meaning, it reveals it. In the pursuit of everything, we often lose ourselves. We forget what we liked before we were told what to like. We abandon the rhythms that once gave us peace in exchange for achievements that never seemed to be enough. Simplicity brings us back to the original blueprint, to the idea that maybe life isn't meant to be constantly optimized, maximized, or monetized. Maybe it's meant to be lived, with presence, with peace, with purpose. Simplicity allows us to give our energy to what we truly care about, to say yes and mean it, to show up without distraction, to create without comparing. It frees us from the mental clutter that says you're behind, you're not doing enough, you're not relevant. And once that noise fades, something remarkable happens. Joy begins to feel natural again. Not because we chased it, but because we stopped chasing everything else. A successful life today looks very different than what we were told it should look like. It might mean a small circle, but deep trust. A modest home, but peace inside it. A career you enjoy, even if it's not flashy. Simplicity has redefined the finish line. It's no longer about how much you've gathered, but how much you've let go of. Not how far you've climbed, but how grounded you feel where you are. We were raised to chase, to perform, to accumulate. We were taught that the louder our life, the more successful we must be. But somewhere in the noise we began to sense it. That more wasn't making us feel better. That behind the polished goals and curated moments, something essential was missing. The truth is, the world doesn't need a more frantic version of you. It needs a more present one, a calmer one, a grounded one. The one that doesn't react to every trigger, doesn't run for every trophy, doesn't bend for every opinion. It needs the version of you that knows peace is not passive, it's a daily choice. That silence isn't emptiness, it's space for meaning. That simplicity isn't a lack, it's a return. We are not our reactions. We are not our followers. We are not our productivity. We are something deeper, something quieter. And when we detach from the chaos, even just a little, we begin to hear it, the inner voice we've silenced for too long. The one that values presence over pressure, peace over approval, stillness over stimulation. This isn't about retreating from life. It's about redesigning how we live it, slower, softer, smarter, not to fall behind, but to move in alignment. Because when the mind is quiet, clarity speaks, and when peace becomes the goal, success takes on a different shape, one that actually feels like it fits. So take the pause, choose the calm, Protect your stillness. In a world that's always trying to speed you up, slowing down is a revolution. And in that stillness, you'll find something most people are still running toward but haven't yet found. You'll find you.